Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session, Charting the Path, the Future of AI Agents in the Enterprise. Joining me today is TC Sutton, Managing Director, Global Technology of Slalom. Welcome, TC.
Welcome, Praneal. Good to be here.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. And, maybe we can start off with a little bit of introduction about yourself, TC. Could you tell the SnapLogic community about your background?
Sure. So I've been in the integration space now for about 20 years, and I started my career in sort of just plain software development and started my own company doing software development, and then realized that there was this chasm that existed between these hyper-specialized SaaS solutions that were coming out and how do you integrate them. And that was sort of the beginning of the iPaaS journey for me. And I've been part of that iPaaS journey now for the last 8 years and love every second of it.
Well, great. Thank you for, again, joining us. So our session today is going to be about AI agents in the enterprise. And as you know, AI is being talked about in every meeting and boardroom. Many fear it's going to take our jobs, and we've seen companies reduce headcount due to automation and AI-driven efficiencies. What would you really say to those who are concerned?
I mean, I'd say let's start with the reality. Like, it's true. AI is reshaping industries. There's no doubt about it. And there is a valid concern about job displacement. But I think we need to shift the perspective left a little bit, right? And what I mean by that is it's not just about automation. It's really about how AI is augmenting the workforce today, right? The people that are using AI are going to be able to do so much more. And right now, AI is not in a position to take away every job that we have. So being able to equip and empower yourself to know how to use AI is going to be more impactful for you in your career than almost any other technology around today.
Yeah, I mean, you got to embrace it, right? If you don't embrace it, you're going to be left behind. And we've seen this evolution of technology kind of kill jobs and create new jobs as well, right? So embracing it would be awesome. So what guidance would you give organizations to get them started with AI?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of guidance that we can provide to, to companies as well as individuals. And I think we should talk about both, Praneal. And I think where we should really talk about from a business standpoint, right, is it's really important to understand the business objectives, right? And this is something that we see all the time. There's all this hype around AI and use cases and whatnot. But if these use cases are not tied back to a key business objective of an organization, then these AI use cases are going to die on the vine. There isn't going to be any type of funding to support these use cases. So it really starts with making sure that these use cases are highly aligned to any business value that you're trying to drive within the organization. I think the second part is you need to start small, right? Like AI, it's new to a lot of people. It's new to organizations. So you need to start small. You need to be able to prove value, and you need to be able to quickly iterate on any of these solutions. And so being able to have the technologies and tools to be able to quickly iterate on these solutions and build out these prototypes is absolutely critical to the success of any AI initiative that organizations are undertaking today.
Right. Now, I don't think organizations have any type of, apprehension of getting started in AI. I think it's kind of like, how do I get started? And once an organization decides to implement AI, what are the first steps they need to take that they're investing properly, not just financial, but in terms of time, effort, and also resources?
Well, I think that you brought up an important point there, Praneal. Like once organizations decide that they want to get started, right? It really starts with making sure that you've got the executive sponsor that's saying that they're willing to invest in any of these AI initiatives. If you can't get the sponsorship to be able to invest in any of these AI initiatives, it's really going to be hard to move forward within the organization and be able to share and create sort of that culture of innovation that needs to exist for being able to create and modernize the workforce with, augmenting the workforce with any type of agent or AI that's associated with it.
How can they identify and develop these use cases, right? They, like you said, it's got to be low complexity, it's got to be high value. ROI, adoption of the end user actually using it. How can they identify and develop these?
Well, I think that one, you've got to create that culture of innovation within the organization, right? Because AI and all of these use cases, it's really going to be driven by sort of that innovation and people willing to take that next step with you on that journey of how could we be doing this differently, right? A lot of the stuff that individuals may be doing, right, or functions that they may be doing, it's something that is quite repeatable or is following sort of a very scripted process. And a lot of those things are perfect right now for where AI use cases are today. And if you go back maybe 10 years, right, the concept of RPA, right, the process automation, like AI is actually an evolution of that. And there are still a lot of organizations that haven't adopted sort of the RPA aspect because it was clunky. It was very specific to highly repetitive tasks. But with AI, it doesn't have to be exactly the same task, right? The interpretation of the AI engines can actually help kind of make that process a lot simpler. And you can be providing it with additional context that your traditional RPA solutions wouldn't have any way to deal with. But with the new engines, you're able to leverage that data and you're able to leverage processes in a different way that makes interacting with any of these agents in AI so much easier. But thinking about where to leverage RPA in the past, it's now shifting to how can we leverage AI and agents. And I think this is the biggest sort of investment that organizations can be making right now, given the power of what AI can bring and the way that it's going to transform organizations today.
Yeah, I mean, you see so much new technology being released on a daily basis, whether it's a new model, cheaper, faster, smarter, or new orchestration services, or new vector databases, or new front ends, or new agents being put out there. What strategies or frameworks have you seen kind of like work well for companies so that they can catch up with what's going on and not be left in the dark?
So I think the first thing that organizations need to do, right, is they need to be able to understand what are all of the possible use cases that you can be investing in, right? If you think of this as an investment decision where you're going to be investing in AI, right, you want to have and you want to be an intelligent investor into solutions that are being built. And so I think one of the first things you need to do is you need to have sort of a list of what are the use cases that your organization has started to create. And then you need a way to prioritize that list. And you need to understand what's the effort, right? What's the ROI behind each of these use cases, right? What's the risk of implementing these? And once you start to understand sort of the spectrum of how do you evaluate each use case, then I think you can start to kind of plot those and figure out, well, which use cases are going to be your biggest bang for the buck, right? Where do you get started? Which ones are low complexity and high ROI? Because those are the ones that you have the most control over, that are going to drive the business forward and get you that initial quick win and people getting excited about that. And once you get that excitement and you get that innovation going within the organization, you're going to see so much more of that innovation that exists and people wanting to do even more use cases. And I think that's where the framework and making sure that you have the ability to compare use cases against each other and know which ones are you willing to invest in an organization is critical. And so at Slalom, we have what we call our AI value calculator that we help our customers think through exactly that, where we capture those use cases. Do you mind if I just sort of open that up and get into some of these use cases a little bit, Praneal?
No, let's do that. That'd be great.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I'm going to jump into just an existing use case that we already have, just so you can see the process in which we go through to collect some of these use cases. And so we've got this initial use case where we're talking about automated compliance monitoring with Gen AI. And you can see that in this description, right, organizations often face high compliance costs due to manual monitoring and reporting processes. And for this particular one, we're going to say that this is in the technology industry, and this is going to be a functional area of legal. And the purpose of this is being able to take these and be able to compare use cases across other organizations, as well as being able to compare use cases specifically within the functional legal area. And you can see that we have the ability to determine, is this internal facing or external facing? A lot of this is behind the scenes calculation for us to understand, well, what's the risk of this solution? If it is customer facing, there's definitely a little bit more risk that's involved, right? Or if there's specific data that's involved, that could be also higher risk on an internal use case. And we also capture, well, what are the success metrics of any of these solutions that we're talking about? Then we get into, well, who are the end users of this particular solution? Since this is an internal use case, we can see that the end users are legal and compliance. And we can see for the organization that there are about 1,000 different users that are going to be impacted by this solution. Then we can get into some things down here around, well, what's the business value of this solution? Where we'll talk to our customers and understand, is this something that is limited or negligible financial value, all the way up to transformational impact, right? And so depending on how we're seeing this and having those conversations with the individuals that are involved, how is this going to transform? And then also looking at, well, what's the overall risk of this solution? And so we see that we've got the scale of from very low to very high. And then we can see the implementation effort as well. How long does it take to implement? And then we do have the ability to kind of double click into this even further if we wanted to have a little bit more efforts and dimension to talk about, well, is this complexity? Is the data readiness? Right? But for the purpose of where we're at right now, we'll go with just this high level effort score. And then you can also get into, well, what's the cost benefit, right? What are the implementation costs? And each of these, right, in case you're not sure how to calculate the implementation costs, we can go ahead and expand this and break this up into its individual components as well. And likely, and same with the recurring costs if we wanted to go into there. But you can see that we now have plotted all of this stuff out over a 3-year period. And you can see some of the summaries of the results almost immediately up in the top right as we were making some of these updates and changes. And you can see that the ROI after 3 years is 420%. The payback is, or break-even point, is in 23 months. And you can see that there's cash flows for year 0 through year 3, in addition to any cumulative cash flows that would exist. And this is where we're getting that for $4.2 million of return over the 3 years.
Wow, that is pretty detailed. I have not seen a framework of that nature where it has so many inputs and can give you an ROI output that fast. If our customers are interested in going through this exercise, TC, what's the best way for them to reach out? Is this a calculator that's available on your website, or is this a, contact us and we'll work through this together?
This is a contact us and we'll work through it together. What we've realized is we have a lot of expertise in this space, and we can help coach and guide, right? How should you be thinking about this? How do you start collecting these use cases? And so there's some processes involved to make sure that you can be successful of collecting this information up front. Because while it seems like it might be easy to collect, right, it does require, somebody to ask the hard questions to be able to get to the right answers. And then once you have all of these different use cases that are there, we have the ability to then compare these and plot these against each other. And this will make it easier to determine, well, which use case, based out of everything that's been submitted, which are the ones to go after. And you can see that we've got this ASAP in the top left, right? We've got work in here in the bottom left. And then we've got sort of selectively invest up here in the top right. And then anything that's here in the bottom right, that's a delay. This is something that it may not be ready yet. It's definitely risky and the reward isn't there yet. So delay that. Those aren't the ones that you want to be focused on. But every one of these use cases, you're going to have somebody that's really passionate about, that wants to be doing these use cases. And
Yeah.
we'll make sure that you can have these conversations and you can show others within the organizations that we're investing, but we're investing in these high potential ROI investments is absolutely critical to how you should be thinking about this as an organization.
So who would actually lead this initiative at a company? Like typically you've got clients working to, coming to you for these type of initiatives. Would it fall under IT? Does it fall under data? Does it a standalone function? Is the business going after this? And this is the same question we get asked for all emerging technologies. What are the leading indicators on who is actually attacking these business problems in the enterprise?
Praneal, that's a great question. And I'd have to say that it's currently evolving, right? I think initially, a lot of organizations, this falls sort of within the IT or data teams. But
Okay.
as some of these technologies and tools are becoming so much easier to use, right? I see there's this new pathway for sort of your technical business analysts to actually be leveraging some of the technology to build out these solutions. And I think where we're starting to see some of the larger organizations move towards, right, is, well, how do we start to democratize the ability to leverage AI and build agents within our organizations? Because we know that people are starting to get more familiar with how to use all of the Gen AI products today. And being able to stitch those together is something that it's not something that's going to take developers of the past to be able to do, right? You know that you want this particular request to go through an AI engine and you're going to get a response back. But then what are you going to do with that response, right? Or what questions do you want to ask it? And you're starting to see that these agents are evolving in the ability to orchestrate multiple prompts, right? One after another, based and building off of each other. Like, this is the future of where agents is going right now, and we're building this together.
That's awesome. It's such an interesting road ahead for us in terms of what's to come. What are some common traits that you see among organizations that are getting it right?
I would say the biggest thing that organizations are due to getting this right is collaboration. And I'm not just talking about collaboration internally. I'm talking about building an ecosystem of partners, right? Ecosystem of vendors, and bringing in experts to accelerate the AI journey. This is still new to a lot of people, but there are several of us that have been dedicated towards how do you start to build these agents? How do you build these responsibly? How can you leverage, technologies like SnapLogic to actually help orchestrate any of these agents and provide significant value at scale?
So to help with adoption of AI applications inside of the company, how do you, or what kind of advice would you give executives to crowdsource these ideas? You want your end users and your businesses to be bought in, to be using this. How do you get them to the table and make sure that they're not discouraged from bringing up ideas that could go into production?
So I think, one, you have to be willing to sponsor sort of the culture of innovation. And I think one of the things that Slalom did really well was when we started on our AI journey, we created a company-wide initiative where we said that we wanted to do 1,000 demos in 100 days. And the only way that we're going to get there is by having all individuals within the company be contributing to what are some ideas, what are some things that we could go try out, what are some things that we could innovate on. And so that sort of helped us sort of create what we call our impossible factory. And our impossible factory is just that, right? How do we start building these ideas and taking sort of the very basic idea and being able to say, how do we turn this into an AI solution? What could be around this? These are questions that everybody across an organization is typically asking, right? And if we're starting there, how could we do that? Other folks on the team were starting with, if we were to build a company from the ground up and we were thinking about only having agents there, where would we need to actually have humans involved? Right? And so you would start by building out everything that you would know and saying, hey, we're going to leverage AI for this function, right? Where do we get stuck? Because if we're getting stuck somewhere, that's where we can start to bring in humans to be able to then accelerate and provide more value there. And so through that, we were able to create lots of ideas of how agents can be used, where agents can be used. And like we've taken it far enough away from your traditional use cases of, just, the augmented retrieval and whatnot to how could you leverage this for an enterprise architect? There's standards that exist across an organization that are published, right? There are standards that exist online for what does good look like. And so how would you take a solution document and actually do a pre-review with an enterprise architect agent that could give you real-time feedback before you get to a review board on your solution to make sure that all of your data security is included in there, to make sure that compliance, legal, all of that is considered within your solution, to make sure that it follows all of the data requirements that you may have as an organization. And so it can just prompt that ahead of time so that your enterprise architects are focused on solving the bigger problem and not trying to find the small things that are wrong with your proposal document.
Yeah, so let's stick to this enterprise architect agent example, right? You had mentioned there are standards you can find on the internet. There's probably multiple standards that you can find on the internet. So what role will data quality and integration play in the success of these AI projects, right? And where do organizations typically tend to struggle in this area?
So I think there's two parts to this, right? AI is definitely reliant on data. And having clean data, it's ideal, but I think a lot of organizations really struggle here because they're going to take so much time to make their data perfect. And in reality, business leaders are working off of data that already isn't perfect. And so making sure that you just understand that if you're leveraging the data that you have, it's good to know sort of what the quality of the data is, because then that will tell you how much you need to interrogate the answers that AI is providing you. But I wouldn't create that as a blocker. And I think a lot of organizations struggle there. They create that as a blocker. Oh, we don't have good enough data to make this work. I think that's a pretty big misconception. You can leverage the data that you have to create significant value with the solutions that are out there already. And I think the second part of this is you have to make sure that the data is accessible. It doesn't do any good if your data is not accessible. And I think this is where platforms like SnapLogic really play a critical role because it's already connected to all of your data. And being able to leverage that connectivity and the access to the data is really what's going to help drive the next generation of AI agents, as well as being able to leverage any type of AI within your organization.
Right. I mean, we could see now agents are orchestrating other agents too, right? So orchestration, data quality, data integration, access to the data, these are all table stakes for a successful, agent implementation. Now we talked about earlier the rapid pace of AI innovation. We have DeepSeek dropping models, drops the cost, stock market kind of falls into an array. Then that's a trickle down on are we implementing and using the right technology? How can we ensure that we're building for long-term success rather than just chasing these trends?
Well, I think there's a combination of both there, Praneal. You have to be at the forefront of this innovation because those that are are going to be able to stick around and weather the storm, because AI is going to create efficiencies like we haven't seen before. And if you're too late to the efficiency game, right, and you're not creating that culture of innovation that exists within the organization, I really do fear that the long-term success of some organizations is going to be at jeopardy. And so making sure that you've got the right talent that is skilled up in some of this. I'm not saying that you have to make, billions of dollars of investment here, but you do need to be equipping your people and empowering your people with AI and how to use AI for you to be able to quickly adapt to the changing in the environment that exists today. And being able to swap out models, being able to do all that's part of the game right now. And making sure that you've got the right tools that can easily help you do that, and that you're not building yourself into a corner, is critical to the success of any type of AI initiative, or in reality, any type of software development.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it from like the development point of view. I'm not a developer. I'm an end user of this type of technology. And how, or have you seen end users get training on how to interact with agents? Is that something that's ever come up in your conversations with your clients?
So when we build agents for our customers, right, you would think that, oh, it's just perfectly intuitive. Everybody's going to know how to interact with agents and how to interact with AI. That's a pretty big misconception, Praneal, because people do need to be trained on how to use it. What are the best use cases, right? How is this agent set up? What tools does this agent have access to, right? It's not, it's not just a Google search, right? It is, you're actually targeting to build this agent very specifically and giving it the ability to do and take certain actions, or to at least prompt, right, for an approval of different actions that you want these agents to take. And I think that's critical to make sure that everybody understands, right, what agents are and how to interact with agents, because then they can start to trust what the agents are doing. And once you start to trust what agents are doing and understand that, oh, I want to be informed in these situations, in these scenarios, and you start to capture the metrics around that, well, every time I informed you, you said yes and approved it. Yeah. Well, then you really don't need to be saying yes and approve it. Like, you've proven out that this agent is doing exactly what you want it to do. And that's built the trust, because now you can go back and look at the data and say, we've approved, whether it's 90, 95% of these, like, that's a really good success rate in terms of approval. And so how can you then start to identify, well, what is that 5% that you need approval for? And making sure that you're starting to adopt and change these processes to be able to create the biggest impact for people that are using these agents and interacting with agents. And once you get people to sort of get on board and see, what is that new process looking like? How am I still involved in it? And how is it going to continue to evolve once we get this released? It's an iterative process. Like I said, you start capturing the data and then you move forward.
I mean, that's really, really good advice. It's iterative at this point. It's still evolving. We need to all kind of work together. And so in this world of AI, it's the innovation is fast. We talked about a new modern way to do RPA, putting an LLM in the middle so nothing's hard coded. We talked about retrieval, augmented generation. We talked about RAG. We talked about assistants, right? And then now we're talking about agents autonomously working, maybe a 5% human in the loop. What do you see as the big shift next? How are people going to adopt these and scale it? And how should an organization be preparing to implement these three buckets of AI technology?
Well, I mean, I think you called it out, Praneal. Like, we are entering sort of what we're calling the agentic era of AI in today's world. And I think people really need to start to embrace, right? What does life look like in this agentic era? It is going to change for a lot of individuals. It's going to change for all of us. I know me personally, I'm using AI more than ever right now. And when I think about workflows that are being created, I'm thinking about agents and how they're going to be supporting these workflows. And so I think, one, we have to create that fundamental mind shift that it's not always humans that need to be doing something. I agree that there's a process and there's things that need to happen, but I think we should be thinking about where are humans going to provide the most strategic value? What decisions do they need to be making? And where are they going to contribute to the broader success of the organization? I think there's a lot of repeatable tasks that exist within the organizations today. I think as we move forward, there's going to be a lot less repeatable tasks, which means we as individuals are going to continue to have to evolve, right? And have to be challenging ourselves on what are the bigger problems to be solving, and how do I equip myself with the ability to understand not just the technology side of it, but also the business side of it. Because once you understand both of those and being able to put those together, you're going to be able to create solutions that truly transform the way that your organization operates and works. And by creating that transformation, you're going to be setting yourself further ahead than any of your competitors.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I could probably go another 25 minutes to an hour talking about these topics. I'm sure our customers would love that too. Are there any last tips or thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would probably want to challenge the audience a little bit, right? Because I do believe that having at least 5 to 10 AI initiatives that are ongoing within your organization is really going to help focus and create that culture of innovation that's needed to succeed. If you're scared, that's okay. You can be scared of AI, you can be scared of all these technologies, that's okay. But you do need to be thinking about how are you going to invest in some of this, because failure to invest is going to be one of the biggest mistakes that you can make as a leader within your organization or as an individual contributor within your organization. You need to be investing in yourself. The company needs to be investing in AI, and understanding how agents are going to play a role in the future of work is what's going to make you successful in the future.
Well, I appreciate your time today, TC. Thank you so much for your insight, and hope to see you at the next AgentFest and continue the conversation.
Thank you, Praneal. Have a good one.